As outgoing President Barack Obama made his final overseas trip as president, starting in Greece, incoming President Donald Trump pondered his potential cabinet picks. Just before leaving on his trip, President Obama held a press conference where he said that Trump was committed to NATO, and he was asked about his impressions of the president-elect.
I don't think he is ideological. I think ultimately he's pragmatic in that way, and that can serve him well.
Trump's latest potential cabinet picks may demonstrate a pragmatic business approach to move the country forward. On the campaign trail, Trump pledged to approve the Keystone Pipeline and said he'd take steps to make the U.S. energy independent. Some of those being considered to head up the Department of Energy would help him accomplish that. Among them, North Dakota Congressman Kevin Cramer. North Dakota has become one of the nation's top oil-producing states. Oklahoma oil tycoon Harold Hamm. The billionaire's Continental Resources Company is involved in shale oil fracking. Also considered for head of the Department of Energy, or Interior, is venture capitalist Robert Grady. Grady previously worked in the Bush administration, but the big surprise may be Trump's potential pick for Secretary of State, America's top diplomat. For now, it appears to be Trump supporter and friend Rudy Giuliani, a former federal prosecutor. Many people thought Giuliani would be appointed U.S. Attorney General or possibly head of Homeland Security. But Trump reportedly told the former New York City mayor he can have any cabinet position he wants. And Trump may appoint gay Republican Richard Grenell to be ambassador to the United Nations. Grenell is a foreign policy expert and the longest-serving U.S. spokesman at the UN. Still to come, who the president-elect will choose for the important posts of Secretary of Defense, Intelligence, Homeland Security, and Treasury. And once his cabinet is firmed up, Trump will have another important personnel decision to make. Who will replace the late Antonin Scalia on the U.S. Supreme Court? Trump has vowed to appoint pro-life justices and judges, those who may potentially overturn Roe v. Wade.
If it ever were overturned, it would go back to the states. So it would go back to the states.
Some women won't be able to get an abortion.
No, it'll go back to the states.
By state? No, some.
Yeah. Well, they'll perhaps have to go to another state.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us now from the White House. And Dave, how do you think the Senate Democrats will react, for example, to Giuliani? He should breeze through, wouldn't you think, or no?
Well, I think they're going to give him a tough time, but ultimately he's going to get approved if and when he becomes Secretary of State, or at least nominated for Secretary of State. But they'll give him a hard time. Look, I mean, you know, Pat, Chuck Schumer and a bunch of those New York Democrats are going to give Giuliani a run for his money when he sits down for any sort of confirmation hearing. But this would be a coup de grace, not just for the Trump administration if Giuliani were Secretary of State, but for Giuliani himself. Let's remember, before John Kerry, let me think. Oh, that's right, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and Rudy Giuliani and Hillary Clinton, well, there's no love lost between the two of them. So to think about this, for Giuliani to, in essence, replace Secretary Clinton from 2 Secretary of States ago, if you will, would be such a feather in the cap personally for Rudy Giuliani. But beyond that, there's a lot of work to be done if he indeed was going to be in that crucial position, Pat.
Well, how about the energy nominees? You know, Harold Hamm, Continental Resources, he's an interesting guy. He's made a lot of money in fracking. I think he's lost some money recently, had a big, highly publicized divorce where his wife took him for a lot of money. What do you think?
Well, the word here on the D.C. streets, or the district, if you will, is Harold Hamm is the leading candidate to run the energy department. And indeed, you're right, shale oil, fracking, this is what he's all about, exactly the opposite of what President Obama had any desire to do. And I think one of the first things you'll see, whether it be Harold Hamm, of course, it'll be all ultimately decided by Donald Trump, and that is to get rid of that clean power plan that President Obama put in place that would, in essence, reduce carbon emissions from power plants all across the country. That's now being litigated in court, but Donald Trump has no desire to see that go forward, and so he looks to repeal that as he continues to look at offshore drilling. We're going to have a whole different sort of energy policy here at the White House come January 20th, Pat.
What is your sense of Trump's political philosophy about how to get things done in Washington?
Well, look, this guy he's not a traditional Republican, newsflash. He's not, obviously, a Democrat. He's a Trumpublican, is what I like to call him. In other words, he's a guy that's going to put America first. And it's no surprise. He talked about this on the campaign trail. He'll put America first. And what does that mean exactly? Well, it means I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I'm going to be pragmatic. And I think that's the number one goal, if you will, for Trump, is to be pragmatic, be a negotiator, be a deal maker, figure all of this out. Now, remember, that comes with a word of caution here, Pat. All of these conservative groups, including conservative Christian groups, need to be ready and understand that Trump's going to cut a deal. And in the past, cutting a deal meant sacrificing your principles potentially here in Washington. We'll see how Trump navigates that, because I think that will be a lot of pushback that he's going to get from traditional Republican sources. They have to remember, this is not GOP orthodoxy here come January 20th. If you are a Republican, if you're a conservative, and you voted for Donald Trump, you have to understand that you're not going to get the traditional Republican playbook. Are you okay with that? I think that's a separate Dr. Phil psychological discussion that every one of us is going to have, Pat.
David, he got a call from Putin, and they seem to be buddies. You know, Putin is KGB to the core, and I know Trump is a great deal maker, but he's up against the best. Do you think he's going to get taken in that engagement?
Well, Trump's track record throughout his business dealings is he just doesn't get taken to the tune of billions of dollars. So it seems like he won't get taken. Having said that, Putin's a tough cookie, if you will, but so is Trump. And, you know, one of the things we saw during the campaign is that Trump was giving Putin all of this praise, and the media went apoplectic, if you will, or apocalyptic, if you will, about the fact that he would praise Putin. Look, Trump knows, I've been covering this guy for 7 years now, Trump knows that it's all about leverage. It's all about the art of the deal. You butter up your opponent, you get him smiling, get him comfortable, and then you go in for what you need.
Okay. Well, one last one. He put Reince Priebus in, who's certainly a traditional Republican, has been a brilliant leader of the RNC. Now he's got Bannon in there, who, in some of the statements that he's made in Breitbart, have been extremely inflammatory. How are the two of them working out so far?
Well, this is going to be interesting, Pat, to say the least. Maybe interesting isn't all that great of a word. Maybe something bigger than that. Look, this is fire and ice. I mean, this is, to use a food analogy, and believe me, Pat, I love food. Vanilla ice cream, Reince Priebus, standard. Rocky Road, Steve Bannon. Totally two different flavors. You choose the flavor, and Trump is going to be able to choose that flavor depending on what the issue is. For example, trade. Steve Bannon, much more in line with Donald Trump's views on trade than Reince Priebus. So he'll mix and match and pick, deciding what he wants to do specifically with each one of those. It's going to be very interesting. You know, Reince Priebus, remember, he's the guy that has the Washington connections. So does Mike Pence, obviously, and that's what he needs Reince Priebus for. And Steve Bannon is the guy, if you will, to kind of just get him thinking a little bit outside the box. And Donald Trump likes that. He likes to have advisors that are going to compete with one another. It'll make for great palace intrigue, though, I'll tell you that.
Okay, well, stay with it. You couldn't be at a better time and a better place in history. You'll have a lot of fun.
Thanks, Pat.